Big news of the day is another horrific mass shooting, this time in Colorado, where 10 people were killed at a Colorado supermarket. According to the Associated Press, a shooting at a Colorado supermarket killed 10 people on Monday, including a police officer who was the first to respond to the scene, according to authorities. Police arrested a suspect. They didn't reveal his name or any details about the shooting at an evening news conference where Boulder Police Chief Maris Harold fought back tears. Investigators had just begun sorting through evidence and witness interviews and didn't have details on a motive for the shooting at the King Soopers store in Boulder, which is about 25 miles northwest of Denver, home to the University of Colorado, according to Boulder County District Attorney Michael Doherty. He said, "This is a tragedy and a nightmare for Boulder County. These were people going about their day, doing their shopping. I promise the victims and the people of the state of Colorado we will secure justice." The attack was, according to the Associated Press, the 7th mass killing this year in the United States, following the March 16th shooting that left 8 people dead at 3 Atlanta area massage businesses, according to a database compiled by the Associated Press, USA Today, and Northwestern University. And of course, it all depends on how you define mass shooting, because some definitions are like 3 people or more. Some definitions are 5 people or more. It follows a lull in mass killings during the pandemic in 2020, which had the smallest number of such attacks in more than a decade, which is mainly because people were locked inside their houses, so people couldn't congregate, which meant it was more difficult to pull off a mass shooting. This database tracks mass killings defined as 4 or more dead, not including the shooter. One of the reasons, by the way, that a lot of these statistical databases like to separate off mass shootings with 4 or more dead is because if they include 3 or more dead, then the numbers rise dramatically and the racial composition of the shooters goes dramatically differently. Because it turns out there are a lot of gangland shootings that involve people who are killing 2, 3 people. And so the numbers change pretty radically. You'll notice that mass shootings are always the excuse for gun control, but the deadly violence that happens in Chicago every single weekend, that is never the excuse for gun control. Because again, this plays into the broader media narrative, which is that the big problem in America is white supremacy and America's systems of violence. The slain officer was identified as Eric Talley, 51, who'd been with Boulder police since 2010, according to Herald. He went to the store after a call about shots fired, someone carrying a rifle. He was, by all accounts, one of the outstanding officers of the Boulder Police Department. His life was cut too short, Doherty said, of Talley. Identities of the other 9 victims were not disclosed Monday night, as police were still notifying their family members. Matthew Kirsch, acting U.S. Attorney for Colorado, pledged the full weight of federal law enforcement to support the investigation. Officers did escort a shirtless man with blood running down his leg out of the store in handcuffs. Authorities would not say if he was, in fact, the suspect. Officials have not said whether the suspect is the person who was taken from the shooting scene to Foothills Hospital in Boulder, and the hospital is not releasing any more information. Dean Schiller told the AP he had just left the supermarket when he heard gunshots and saw 3 people lying face down, 2 in the parking lot, 1 near the doorway. He said he couldn't tell if they were breathing. There was also video live streamed on YouTube, which showed 1 person on the floor inside the store and 2 more outside on the ground. And you can hear gunshots at the beginning of the video. At one point, authorities said over the loudspeaker the building was surrounded and you need to surrender. Sarah Moonshadow told the Denver Post 2 shots rang out just after she and her son, Nicholas Edwards, finished buying strawberries. She said she told her son to get down, and then we just ran. It's obviously just another horrific mass shooting. And the media typically in these situations respond by suggesting, of course, that people who don't agree with their basic policy prescriptions are somehow unsympathetic to the victims in these sorts of situations. Because you know that the next political move here, forever and always, will be a federal call for gun control. Joe Biden has been looking for an excuse to push gun control for a little while here now. He's been talking about gun control consistently for the last 10, 15 years. He used to be somebody who's a little looser on gun control. Now he is somebody who's much tighter on gun control. He's been pushing for an assault weapons ban, a la the 1994 assault weapons ban that really had no impact on mass shootings in the United States. He's been looking for that for quite a while. So this will be used politically as a hook in order to push forward the gun control agenda. And the media are going to foster this by suggesting, of course, that if you don't agree with Joe Biden's agenda, it's because you don't care about the people who were killed. It's a cheap political trick that is played during every tragedy, that if you don't agree with my policy prescription, it's because you don't care about the people who have died or the people who've been victimized in any particular way. And you can see the media already ramping up for this, right? That if you say that the gun control measures that are likely to be pushed by the federal government are extraordinarily unlikely to prevent mass shootings. In fact, virtually every gun control policy that's been pushed by the federal government has had no impact on mass shootings. The number of guns in circulation in the United States has risen dramatically over the course of the last 15 to 20 years. The number of people who have been killed in mass shootings year on year has actually been going down. But that does not matter to the folks who push gun control. And so their idea is you are unsympathetic to victims. This has been a thing ever since I told Piers Morgan not to do it on CNN. The reality is that you can be deeply sympathetic to people who have been harmed in any sort of crime and still recognize that that bad policy does not solve the problem. Okay, but you can see the media already setting the predicate. So here on CNN was one of their reporters saying that this is just the way America is. This is just, it's unique to America. This is how America is now. Realistically speaking, America does have more absolute numbers of mass shootings than other countries. But there are mass shootings in Australia. There have been mass shootings in Norway. If you were to look at the number of deaths per million from mass shootings, it's actually higher in some civilized countries than it is in the United States. Nonetheless, again, the predicate here is that America is unique, that this problem is easily solved by a simple policy change, which of course it is not. And the media are going to suggest that if you oppose that policy change, it's because you don't care about what just happened in Boulder, Colorado. Here was CNN jumping on that within probably an hour of the shooting breaking.
A larger story here that may not be addressed today, but is one that we have to address in light of what happened in Atlanta, which is, are we facing a spring and summer of mass casualty events as we come out, as people congregate? And that is something that the Biden White House will have to address as well.
Juliet, how can that be? How can it be that after a year of basic quarantine in the country, the first thing we do as Americans is go back to mass shootings? I mean, how can that be?
Okay, so again, the level of incredulity, I believe it's Alison Camerata over on CNN, the level of incredulity there, the notion that you are, how can it be that we as Americans aren't doing anything? I didn't shoot anyone today, did you? I didn't engage in a mass shooting. In fact, as of yesterday, as far as I'm aware, there were some 330 million Americans who didn't engage in a mass shooting. It's not as though everybody went out in the streets and started shooting guns in the air and then turned the guns on their fellow citizens. There are 300 million guns in the United States. There are over 100 million long guns in the United States. Okay, virtually none of them were used in a mass shooting yesterday. But there was one used by somebody who was evil. We don't know his name yet. We don't know his motive yet. Okay, so we have no insight into why this happened. We have no insight into how the gun was obtained. We just don't have any information as of yet. That has not stopped the media from immediately setting the emotional groundwork for a gun control push. And again, the emotional groundwork is that this is the norm in America. This is what's regular, and most Americans are fine with it. Most Americans just turn a blind eye. Casey Hunt at NBC News, pushing the same sort of idea. She's the Capitol Hill correspondent. She tweeted out, "We're all emotionally exhausted after the last year. We've lost so much and so many. But I refuse to let exhaustion help normalize 10 people getting shot and killed as they go about their daily lives for any or no reason. We have a moral imperative to be better than this." I don't even know what that last part means. A moral imperative to be better than what? Nobody is saying that what happened in Colorado is decent, good, or should be something that we ignore. Who is saying that? Better than what? Did you engage in a mass shooting yesterday? I didn't. This notion that all Americans are somehow okay or blasé about 10 fellow Americans being shot to death in a supermarket, including a police officer, and some of them blasé about that we can't just go back to our normal. I don't believe that Casey Hunt is more sympathetic than you are, or than I am. I don't believe that Casey Hunt is a deeper wellspring of emotion than you are or than other normal Americans are. I think all Americans are rightly outraged at the act of evil that we saw yesterday in Boulder, Colorado. But again, the media are setting the groundwork. And the groundwork is that when Joe Biden comes out and makes an emotional pitch for gun control, if you don't believe that gun control is truly well calibrated toward reducing risk and preserving rights, then this means that you just don't care, right? You're not better than this, in the words of Casey Hunt, right? You shouldn't normalize that. Nobody's normalizing anything. But this is the same game that our media play, and it really is kind of an emotionally manipulative game. That if you don't agree with what they want, it means you're a bad person. That is the subtle argument that is being made here. It's not a particularly subtle argument in reality. Some people are less subtle even than that. Mary L. Trump, who is famous only because her last name is Trump and has made $1 bajillion off of writing a book about how much she doesn't like Donald Trump. So Mary L. Trump tweeted out, "The NRA is a terrorist organization and should be treated as such." Do we have any evidence that this particular person was an NRA member, or that the NRA fostered his behavior, or that the NRA trained him for this behavior? And by the way, what exactly is that suggestion? If the NRA is a terrorist organization, then presumably we should round up all the members and put them in Gitmo. If the NRA is a terrorist organization, what, we're going to go around, does Joe Biden now have the capacity to just drone American citizens who happen to believe in the Second Amendment? So little of this is rooted in anything remotely resembling a policy debate that if you want to make a case for specific pieces of legislation that would mitigate mass shootings or shootings at all, while actually preserving Americans' fundamental right to defend themselves and defend their property and defend their rights, then bring it forth. But this is the big problem. And Barack Obama used to admit this all the time. He used to say, sure, legislation we're now bringing forward on gun control wouldn't have stopped this shooting. But it might stop other shootings. Might. Okay, well, if it wouldn't stop this shooting, then why are you talking about this piece of legislation on the back of this particular act of evil? They recognize the game before it's being played, because I promise you this is going to be the narrative over the course of the next couple of weeks as Joe Biden immediately shifts into gun control mode. He's immediately going to shift into gun control mode. The media are going to shift along with him because they don't want to talk about what's happening on the border, because that, of course, is a Biden-fostered crisis. And so they're immediately going to shift with Joe Biden into gun control talk. And the implication is going to be those evil obstructionist Republicans, if only they would just go along with the gun control agenda, then all of this would stop. And if they don't go along with it, it's because they wish to normalize, in the words of Casey Hunt, what just happened in Colorado. Again, no one is normalizing acts of evil. That is not something that any fellow American is doing. And if you're imputing to fellow Americans that they literally don't care about people getting shot in a supermarket in Colorado, we shouldn't share the same country. If you truly believe that your fellow Americans do not care about innocents being gunned down in a supermarket, then you're living next to people who are evil. And you shouldn't be sharing a town with them. You shouldn't be sharing a church with them. You shouldn't be sharing a country with them. But that is the underlying emotional play that is being made here by your delightful mainstream media. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.